we're talking today about the early days of the North Shannon Yacht Club. So this picture is actually quite interesting because it shows a group of people coming ashore on the jetty at the North Shannon Yacht Club. And you can see a lady with a large hat, and you can see a man behind her. So that man behind her is Henry Edwin King Tennyson, 9th Lord Kingston, and the lady would be Ethel Lizette, his wife. So he was Commodore of the club from 1904. So he's being greeted ashore by all the club members who are all clustering together there at the end of the jetty. Now, out on the moorings, we can see on the left-hand side, we have the Mills family house called the Mayfly. And in the middle, the large steamer, that would be Dudley Fletcher's steamer called the Shannon. He was one of the Shannon commissioners. And over on the right, I don't know what boat that is on the right. So if anybody can advise us, it'll be interesting to find out what boat that is. Now, moving on to our next picture. This is an image from the Ordnance Survey map of the north end of Loch Boderg, a little spit of land called Rinmore, where the clubhouse from the North Shannon Yacht Club was located. The clubhouse was known to the members as the Tin House because it was made of corrugated iron. And in this 1890s map, it shows the club flagstaff beside the club, right beside the clubhouse itself. The map also shows the jetty, which we saw in the first picture, where the boats tied up and the rowing boats came in from the houseboats onto the moorings. And over the years, progressively more and more jetties actually got built at this spot. And a little piece of an aside, during the Troubles, the flagstaff was stolen in September 1922 by a man by the name of William McCormick, who took the pole and concealed it at his house in Rooskey. Now, we don't know whether he intended to use it for firewood or whether he intended to sell it back to the club. But anyway, when the case came to court in January 1924, the judge, a Mr. Beattie, was a nationalist sympathizer, was very lenient on Mr. McCormick, and he let him off with a warning. I have visited the site where the clubhouse was, and there's no evidence of anything surviving on the ground. There are various caravans and the like in the area, but no evidence of where the clubhouse actually stood. Now, this is a general map showing the Loch Bofin and Boderg. At the bottom of the map, you can see the village of Rooskey. North of that, Loch Bofin with Drummond Harbour and Drummond Village on the Leitrim side. At the narrows between the two lakes, we have Derry Carn House, the home of the Earl of Harlech on the Leitrim side. And we'll be talking about that later. The site of the clubhouse can be seen right up at the top end of the lake. And it's near to the village of Kilmore, and also in the vicinity was Tully House, the home of Mrs. Sam Russell. It was located near the village and was a venue for many of the after-sailing parties. Now, we're aware of various different strands of development of yachting in the North Shannon area in the late 19th century. The first strand relates to the people who lived in the houses close to the lake, who owned yachts and who sailed them on the lakes. It appears that some yachting was done on Loch Drumharlow in the early 1890s. So the question is, who lived near the lake and who owned a yacht? We know that the steamer Shanksha was owned by Major William Lloyd of Rockville House, which was on the Roscommon side. The house was accessible from Grange Loch, which was off Carnadoe Loch on the west side of Loch Boderg. But she wasn't a sailing yacht. She was built as a steamer in 1846 in Scotland for Mr. Sankey. When Major Lloyd bought her in the early 1890s, he used her just for shooting and fishing trips on the river and on the lake. In 1912, she passed to Major Lloyd's son, William Hutchinson Lloyd, better known as Billy, and he spent a lot of money converting her into a houseboat. complete with a grand fireplace. Miller and Beattie of Grafton Street were employed to carry out the work, and they put in some fine mahogany wall paneling and the best of interior furnishings. And in fact, the chair I'm sitting on now was one of the chairs that came from Shanksha. She was sold to the Irish government in about 1922, who intended using her as a marine research vessel, but that never really happened, and she was just left moored in Portumna for a year. And then she was bought by Dr. Vincent Delaney from Longford in 1923, at which time she had no engine, and she had to be towed to the regattas, such as the North Shannon Regatta. And the Delaneys then sold her to Sid Shine in 1942. That's all a little bit of a digression, I'm afraid. But one person who was sailing on Loch Drumharlow, or Loch Eden, in the early 1890s was Charles C. Beresford White. He lived in Cartley House, Kiltohert, Carrick-on-Shannon, on the Leitrim side. He was a descendant of Richard St. George, one-time governor of Athlone. And in the 1870s, the Beresford White owned 1,600 acres of land in Leitrim and some in Waterford as well. Beresford White became a committee member of the North Shannon Yacht Club when the club was founded in 1896. What type of boat he sailed or whether he had anybody to race against, we don't know about that at this stage. Another strand of yachting in the area relates to Kilronan Castle, which was in Keju, County Roscommon, the home of Lieutenant Colonel Henry Ernest Newcomen King Tennyson, 8th Earl of Kingston, who was born in 1848. King Tennyson had invested heavily in the Cavan and Leitrim Railway, which conveniently linked his home at Keju to Drummond on Loch Bowfin. Henry's eldest son, Henry Edwin King Tennyson, born in 1874, as the future head of the family, needed a son and an heir. He lived in London and served in around about 1900. He served overseas in Africa with the military. In London, he met Ethel Lizette Walker, who was 2 years older than him. She was the youngest daughter of Sir Andrew Berkeley Walker, 1st Baronet Walker of Gateacre in Lancaster and Osmondton Manor in Derby. I think you can see from the scale of the two houses he had that they were fairly generous houses, so he was a wealthy man. He was a brewer based in Liverpool. Henry Edwin and Ethel Lizette became engaged probably about 1893. And because there was so much money involved, the two families had to agree terms and conditions for some kind of a marriage settlement. And Ethel Lizette's father died in 1893. And at that time, his property was worth £2,876,000 in those days, which is an awful lot of money today. And in his will, he stipulated that £100,000 be left in trust for his unborn nephew, Viscount Kingsborough, who, when born, would be the eldest son of Henry Edwin and Ethel Lizette. And the couple didn't get married until February 1897. So both the Berkeley Walker family and the King Tennyson family were both interested in yachting. Sir Andrew Berkeley Walker owned a yacht called Ailsa, and he raced against the Prince of Wales's Britannia. Ailsa was 107 foot long, 25-foot beam, displaced 116 tons, and carried 10,000 square foot of sail area. That's a hell of a lot of sail area. Sir Andrew died in 1893, and his eldest son, Peter, inherited the boat. But Peter wasn't interested in racing it, so Peter's younger brother, Andrew Berkeley Walker Jr., then aged 20, took over the Ailsa. And in the spring of 1895, he raced Ailsa in French Mediterranean regattas. And this picture on the left here shows some of the modest silver cups that he won racing in the Ailsa at that time. The Earl of Kingston invited Andrew Barclay Walker Jr. to a 2-day regatta at Loch Boderg for the 12th of September 1895, after which the two families could get to know each other better and they could seal a marriage agreement. A newspaper report exists describing this event and the 5 yachts which took part. Now, Ailsa was too big to bring to Loch Boderg, so there was a challenge then. What was Andrew Barclay Walker going to sail in? It was time for him to have his own yacht anyway, so he commissioned a modest yacht called the Kuhona. So this is an image of the Kuhona. This is the first boat he ever owned in his own right. She was described as a 1.5 rater, and she was probably towed by a houseboat from the Clyde in Scotland, where she had raced the previous year, and thence down to Loch Ney on the River Bann, down the Ulster Canal to Loch Earn, and then to Belturbet. The Ballyconnell Canal was no longer navigable, as it had closed in 1873, so the Kuhona and her tugboat were transferred to the Cavan-Leitrim Railway, which brought them to Drummond, where they were launched. Invitations were also sent out to people of suitable standing to attend this elite regatta. The other people who came to the regatta were Arthur Temple Harris of Waterstown Glasson, a member of the Athlone Yacht Club, and he had a 1-rater called Dashaway. George T. Parsons, a relative of the Burr Parsons from Grania Oga in Athlone, brought his 1-rater, the Eileen. Captain Minchin from Marlborough and Traherne Holmes from St. David's, both members of the newly formed Loch Derg Corinthian Yacht Club, brought the controversial 1-rater Knockrockery. She had been designed and built in Cowes by Charles Sibbick in 1893 and was a very successful boat in a number of different owners before the Irish owners bought her. Mr. Anderson brought the Pat Ward built 1-rater Wee Win. The weather over the days leading up to the regatta were really bad, and several other yachts whose owners had been invited ended up being stranded in Athlone, being unable to cross Loch Ree. Nevertheless, Knockrockery decided to thrash through the bad weather on the lake, and she lost nothing more than one of her crew member who deserted and a punt, which was carried away by the stormy waters of Loch Ree. And perhaps these two events were related. Perhaps the deserter went off in the punt. Thursday was the first day of the regatta, and the first race was for the Carrigina Challenge Cup for yachts of any rig or rating over 2 laps of the course. Despite the centreboard Kuhona leading the entire race until the last beat, it was won by 1 minute and 5 seconds by Knockrockery, which, despite being a smaller boat, it did have a fixed keel and sailed upwind better to take the gun, because the Kuhona had been she was a centreboarder. So here we have an image of the raters at one of the North Shannon Yacht Club regattas in the 1890s. These raters, they were very low freeboard and very large sail area, as you can see from this picture. On Friday, the first race was for half-deckers and mermaids, with Wee Win, Dashaway, and Eileen competing. The Eileen pulled away very quickly and led all the way around and was declared the winner by several minutes. And she was awarded the £3 prize. That's pretty modest compared with what the Ailsa had won down in the Mediterranean with those lovely silver cups. The final race for all yachts and centreboards in light winds and a shortened course was won by the Knockrockery from Eileen and Kuhona third. Following the yachting, there were some rowing races in which the O'Hara family from Loch Ree challenged all comers. There were two teams came out to race against them, and after the 2 matches, the O'Haras came out on top, undefeated. A large crowd of country people watched this spectacle. We are told that there were 3 steamers attending the regatta, one belonging to a Mr. Smith. Now, I'm not sure who Mr. Smith is. One belonged to a Mr. Selving, and one belonged to Mr. Walker. The one belonging to Mr. Walker was obviously the boat that he used to tow the Cohona. And I believe that Mr. Selving is in fact Mr. Robert Leving from Carna House, Kiltoom, in Roscommon, in the SS Narcissus. So she was a steamer, not unlike the Phoenix, but a little bit bigger. On the Saturday, there were aquatic sports, but no yachting. Following all the fun and the sailing and the drinking, Mr. Andrew Barclay Walker Jr. announced that he intended inaugurating a regatta on Loch Boderg for 1896. So in response to Mr. Walker's statement, some of the local farmers and professional men from Carrick and Shannon and surrounding areas decided that the repeated regatta should be based around a formal yacht club to be called the North Shannon Yacht Club. So a committee was put in place to organize the club and its regatta. And that committee consisted of Matthew J. Barrett, Republican from Carrick and Shannon, J. Tyrrell Byrne, Justice of the Peace from Drumsna, Charles C. Dignan, who had been the driving force behind the Gailey Bay regattas, Alexander Dickey, an engineer from Boyle, Major William S. Lauder, Justice of the Peace, who was a retired soldier from the Connaught Rangers. Edward Hamilton was a Derry-born bank clerk working in the Provincial Bank in Carrick and Shannon. Captain Henry Pakenham Mahan, he was a landowner from Strokestown House. G.N. Waldron, a farmer from Drumsna. Alexander Wilson, another farmer from Killucan. Charles C. Beresford White, that we've heard about already, who was sailing on Loch Drumharlow. C. Sean Notley, a farmer, served as the Honourable Treasurer, and Robert Devonish and Sam Russell served as the Joint Secretaries. So there was a good team of men there, all the kind of the senior men in society in a way. 3 senior members of society were invited to support the endeavour. The Right Honourable Major William Richard Ormsby Gore, 2nd Baron Harlech, was invited to serve as the club patron. And he lived in Derrycarn House, which was overlooking the Derrycarn Narrows between Beaufin and Boderg. Major William Lloyd of Rockville House was asked to be Commodore and agreed to do so. And George A.P. Kelly, a barrister, was asked to serve as the Vice Commodore. Why was Henry Edwin King Tennyson, who following his father's death in 1896 had become the 9th Lord Kingston, why was he not invited to become a club official? Being only aged 22, he was considered to be too young for such a position, and he had to wait. The 1896 regatta was widely advertised in the local newspapers for Roscommon, Leitrim and Longford. Each advertisement listed all the programme of events, the conditions under which the races would be held, and these conditions included compliance with the Yacht Racing Association rules and included arrangements for entries and procedures for protests. One of the strange rules that they had was that in the races for 18-foot boats, you could enter in a 19-foot boat, but you had to carry a penalty, which was 1 minute per hour per foot. And each advertisement ended with the words, "Forward ye dogs of war." Yachts competing consisted of raters, half-deckers, and open 18-footers. So here we have an image of a typical half-decker. Incidentally, this particular half-decker was my grandfather's boat. So you can see the paid hand was actually steering the boat at that particular time. So this would be a little bit later. This is probably in the 1920s, but The pirate, Donlan, was Mickey Donlan was steering the boat. My grandfather, Vincent Delaney, was in the middle. And you can see my father wearing a yachting cap as the crew up forward, as just a teenager. The first day of this regatta was Tuesday, the 4th of August, 1896, and a reporter was sent around from the Roscommon Herald to observe what he saw. When regattas are held, he reported as follows: when regattas are held in centres of population or within a convenient distance of them, they are exceedingly popular reunions. Immense crowds go to see and to be seen, or at least that is their purpose, which generally incites our youths and our maidens to put in an appearance. Friends who may not have seen each other for years meet again, and the crowd contrive to enjoy themselves without so much as looking at a single race. So this reporter was thinking about the rowing regattas at Shannon, where the races started right from the town bridge. At the North Shannon Yacht Club Regatta in 1896, the journalist from the Roscommon Herald saw a solitary knave playing a 3-card trick with a Confederate, a wheezy melodeon, and a few tents. On the water, he saw a flagship decorated with a profusion of gaudy bunting. In other words, he wasn't much impressed. So a Mr. Wallace Moore from Eden Quay, Dublin, was the official timekeeper. And despite the printed program, the third race for one-raters for the Rockville Cup was held first, because the other boats were not ready to go racing. And the rules for the Rockville Cup stated that if a yacht won the trophy 2 years in succession, she could win the trophy outright. Knockrockery had won the trophy the previous year, so she only had to win it once more to win the trophy outright. In the race, Knockrockery sailed the wrong course. Mr. Gleason's Elva won, and of the others, Dashaway gave up, and the Witch carried away her mast. So perhaps Knockrockery was told the wrong course. Maybe that's what actually happened. And in the second race was for mermaids. It was run third, with Mr. Vaughan's Wild Rose, Mr. Wilson's Coolure, Mr. Russell's Chin Chin, Mr. Ross's Saucy Kitty, Mr. Dignan's Wee Win, and Mr. Hagan's Macy competing. The Wild Rose took the gun. The first race for open 18-footers never happened. This is probably because many of the competitors brought 2 or even 3 yachts with them. And so when they were rigging the yachts, they had to concentrate on the bigger boat first. After racing, there would have been tea served in the tin house. On the second day, things improved somewhat with 6 races. The first for half-deckers. Second was a handicap for all boats for the Boderg Challenge Cup. The third race was a rowing race for 2-oared pleasure boats. The fourth race was 4-oared outriggers with a cox, rowed by amateurs. So that's presumably for the boats coming up from the Carrick-on-Shannon Rowing Club. The fifth race was for 4-oared pleasure boats, and the final sailing race was for all yachts steered by amateurs. This was followed by a 6-a-side water football match, with the North Shannon competing against the South. On the final day of the regatta, the first race was at noon for half-deckers and open boats, followed by a race for all yachts at 2 p.m. And then there was a race at 5 o'clock for all comers, followed by another water football match and a tug of war between 4-oared boats. Despite the teething problems, the regatta was considered to be a huge success. What was so special? Well, this was a new stretch of water for many of the competitors. There was a new circle of friends to meet up with and to share a glass of whiskey with. And because most of the entertaining was done on board the houseboats, whiskey was probably more plentiful than beer. There were 4 raters competing, 6 mermaids, and probably the same number of open 18-footers. The first regatta set a pattern for future regattas, and each year there were increasing numbers of boats competing. An increase in the number of houseboats as well. Now this image of the houseboats moored was once again is probably as late as the 1920s, because I think you can see a Shannon 1 design there right in the middle of the moorings. So on the left, there's Mr. Fleming's Ninette. And then beyond that, you can see the Janet. And on the right is the CB, I believe. And beyond her, the Rambler. By 1897, there were new faces on the committee, including John Devonish, a farmer from Jamestown, Robert Kelly, a solicitor from Athlone, and Dr. Noble from Carrick-on-Shannon. And by 1897, the club was offering local racing, not only on Loch Boderg, but on alternate weeks they had racing on Hughtown Lake, starting on Saturday the 19th of June at 3 o'clock. It was in one of these local races that the first serious capsize took place. It was described in October 1897 as follows. The wind was blowing half a gale as Mr. Hamilton's yacht, which was leading, was jibing at a point opposite Holywell. The wind took the sail, turning her completely over, and she, along with the occupants, Messrs. W.H. Gordon, E.W. Hamilton from the Provincial Bank, and W.R. Moran, sub-sheriff, became entirely submerged in the water. An excited crowd on Carrick-on-Shannon Bridge and Quay called wildly for boats to go to their assistance. 5 or 6 boats were quickly launched, and soon after the accident, it was perceived that the yachtsmen were fairly out of danger, for their heads were visible above the water as they clung to the yacht and tried to right her again, which they succeeded in doing, though she was quite full of water when this was done. They got into her and were standing waist deep full of water. They were found to be nothing the worse for their trying adventure, except for the shock and the chilliness occasioned by their unexpected immersion. But these were hastily dispelled by the stimulating effects of a bottle of brandy to which they had recourse. Such accidents were very dangerous. The crews didn't wear life jackets, but they probably did have some life belts or cushions in the boat to which they could hang on to in the event of drifting away from the boat. Also, by October, the flow in the river would have been quite strong, and that would have put the crew into further danger. The boat in question was the Banshee, a one-rater. The next major event for the new club was the arrival of one-design dinghies at the North Shannon Yacht Club Regatta for 1903. 8 water wags were put onto flatbed carriages in Kingstown, and these carriages travelled to Westland Row Station and thence to Drumsna Station, where they were offloaded onto a horse and cart. And then each was carried to the Jamestown Canal, where they were launched and rigged. Meanwhile, other water wag crews took the train from Kingstown to Neenah, where they hired a houseboat called the CB. She had no engine, so she had to be towed by the Shannon steamer. She was towed the 92 miles from Drumineer to Carrick-on-Shannon by the Shannon steamer. At 4 miles an hour, that would have taken 23 hours, but the steamer had to stop at the various points on the way, so it's likely to have taken them at least 3 days to get up the river. They stayed overnight at Carrick and then sailed to Loch Boderg, arriving at 11:30 in time for their first race. The significance of the water wags is that, unlike other classes racing at the time, they did not require handicaps, and all finished much closer than in the other fleets. So let's have a look at an example of some of the race results from 1904. So this image reads as follows. Match 2, Water Wags 1 round. Madideriero, sail number 14, Mr. George Newsom, Bachelor of Arts. It's interesting that they actually mention his degree there, isn't it? So Chiard finished 3 hours, 54 minutes, 12 seconds, and was the winner with one £3 prize. Second was Irene, sail number 10, Mr. D.H. Bailey, Justice of the Peace. 3 hours, she finished 1 minute later, 3 hours, 55 minutes, 25 seconds. Molly, sailed by Dr. Joseph Wigham, 3 hours, 55 minutes, 35 seconds. Only 10 seconds later. Sanatut, sail number 1, Messrs. A.R. O'Connor and W.G. Story, 3 hours, 55 minutes, 40 seconds. So another about 5 seconds later. Eros, sail number 8, Mr. J.M. Goldsmith, 3 hours, 56 minutes, 4 seconds. Verso, sail number 9, Mr. J.C. Eason, 3 hours, 58 minutes, 14 seconds, and so on. So the fleet were all quite compact. So we're assuming that the race started at 3 o'clock. So all of the 8-1 design competitors finished within less than 4 minutes in a race taking 1 hour. And this compares with the results of an 18-foot open centerboard boat the same year, which reads as follows. Match number 2, a handicap race for open boats, 1 round. Pretty Polly, Mr. J.T. Hogan, scratch, finished 1 hour, 51 minutes, 33 seconds. Corrected 1 hour, 51 minutes, 33 seconds. So he was scratch. Dareen, Mr. Michael McKeown, 2.5 minute handicap, finished 1 minute, 54 minutes, 11 seconds. 1 hour, 51 minutes, 41 seconds corrected. And then finally, Water Baby, the Earl of Kingston, steered by William Cox, 10-minute handicap, finished 1 hour, 57 minutes, 47 seconds. 1 hour, 47 seconds, 1 hour, 47 minutes, 40 seconds corrected, was the winner. So Water Baby won the Silver Cup and Pretty Polly the Silver Tankard. So you can see with the variation in speeds of these boats, the slowest 18-footer was expected to be 10 minutes slower, but in fact was only 6 minutes slower than the others around the course. So the timekeeper would have been Henry Roose Newland, who liked to take a drink when the match was going on. So throughout a lot of these results that we have of the races, he got a little bit befuddled by some of the results because of the drinking, but that's neither here nor there. At this early stage, some members of the North Shannon Yacht Club committee saw that there would be value in the 18-footers adopting a 1 design, but nothing was done about it until about 18 years later. The facilities to socialize at the clubhouse were quite minimal. It might have been grand for a cup of tea in your hand, but not much more. So you can see the clubhouse there on the picture there on the right. To compensate for the lack of facilities, Mrs. Sam Russell might throw a dance at Tully House, or Mrs. Georgie French would run a lunch tent beside the clubhouse, or she'd hold a bridge party at her home Dangan House. Mrs. Margaret McKeown sometimes ran a dance or a garden party or a dinner at Belmont near Drumsna, with the visitors going down by boat, carrying their dancing shoes with them. Aughry near Drummond was a small hotel where the men liked to go for a quiet drink in the evenings. So we'll conclude with an extract from the Boderg Regatta song composed by Mrs. O'Neill Clark and dedicated to the Commodore, the Right Honourable the 9th Earl of Kingston, who from 1904 was deemed old enough to be the new Commodore, because the previous Commodore had died by that stage. So this is the Bodarg Regatta song. The English may boast of their Henley, the Yanks the America's Cup, but give me for sport, health and beauty, Bodarg when the flags are all up. The boats they flock in their thousands, at least Sanguine Bob tells me so. The tin house is chock full of prizes, all glittering there in a row. So this picture shows a fleet of the old 18-footers competing at the regatta. So compared with the Shannon 1 designs, they had only 100 square foot of sail, and they varied very much in speed and in the quality of those boats. So then the chorus then for the regatta song was an hurrah for the North Shannon Yacht Club. Long, long may it prosperous be. May the fame of its bold navigators reach down from Coothall to the sea. The motto adopted and stuck to, in spite of the odd angry face, is Festina Lente, especially the Lente in starting a race. The marks they are all late, but what matter? Blue Peter is sure to ascend some time before dark, and we finish a jolly good race in the end. So this picture shows Shannon 1 designs at the North Shannon Yacht Club. So it must be after 1922. And again, you can see the tin house on the right, which is where the teas would have been served. The man who arranges the races should station police at each mark to tell us the course when he changes, not leave us to grope in the dark. The gun is fired off at each winner, though sometimes the man with the bag no cartridges finds there, and gunless, the victor must pass by the flag. I've always a great deal of pity for those who have got to fix up the times for the races for all classes, for it's sure to be a mix-up. For Sweet is quite bound to be crazy if Ada has not got enough, and Delaney is sure to want hours if Una goes out when it's rough. So again, this is a picture of the racers racing at the North Shannon Regatta. The clerk of the weather would find it real hard to keep in with us all, for Nessa likes strong, steady breezes, and never a bit of a squall. And Ada just wants all he'll give her, with Murty to keep her all right, and Mila is best in big billows. Light winds are the Kathleen's delight. There's lots of excitement when Russell with Wilson sails off in chin-chin. He's sure to upset and to fill her, except when a cup he will win. The masts sometimes fall in the water. Vid Mila, the Dream, and Dareen. The loss of stays, halyards, and jib sheets is sure to add fun to the scene. One word I must say of our sailors, for honour where honour is due. I have never heard tell of a better than Parsons for sailing, did you? And Russell McGann and his sister, Bob Adamson, Hogan, and Sweet. The latter by proxy, however, are grand at the tiller and sheet. This is Bob Devenish, the man who seemed to have organized everything and kept the club going on an even keel. And now to conclude my short story, and remember to each one his due. A tribute to Devenish is owing for work most unselfishly done. He keeps the ball rolling all times. No one envies his troublesome job. He's the soul and the very existence. In fact, the North Shannon is Bob. So here we have a picture of the regatta. Yeah, I suppose it's the equivalent of the regatta pictures that we take nowadays, showing all of the people competing at the regatta. So in the back row, you can see a man wearing a light-colored hat, and that would be Lord Kingston. And then beside him is his wife and the daughter in front of him. And there are, my grandfather would be in the front row, probably 1, 2, 3, 4, about 6th man in from the left. So that concludes my talk. So thank you all very much. And if you have any questions, we'll try and answer them.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? Thank you, Vincent.
Why did it all come to an end? And when?
It came to an end because they moved from the North Shannon and they moved down to they moved to the big house beside oh God, what's it?
Loch Forbes.
Loch Forbes. Yeah, they moved to Loch Forbes, and all the Loch Derg people said it's too small for keelboats on Loch Forbes, and they probably should have been tough enough to say to the Lord there that you know the lake's just too small. But anyway, the Loch Derg people all peeled away and said, well, you know, this isn't for us. We're not going to travel so far for a regatta where the facilities just, there's not enough space.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was really the problem. But if they'd been able to hold a regatta, a small regatta Loch Forbes for the 18-footers, and then a bigger one for the bigger boats, that would have worked out. But nobody had the guts to say it.
Yeah. The Earl of Granard, I think he became the Commodore.
The Earl of Granard, that's right, yes, yes.
And he was also the first Commodore of the National Yacht Club, was he not, in Dunleary?
I believe he was,
so.
Yeah.
So, divided loyalties.
Indeed, yeah.
Thanks, Armin. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Well, I think really probably the answer then really is that the sailing died away, but the motor boating kept on going for several years after 1898 or whatever. Sorry, after 1920. So yeah, just after 1920, there was still some motor boating, and then they moved away from Lord Granard's Lake. They moved down river a little bit.
Any other questions or comments? I think somebody was trying to get in there a moment ago.
Yeah, hi. Vincent, thank you so much for the history of the North Shannon. I think you can draw so many similarities with what happened then and what happens now. I'm sure plenty of you, Alan, DJ, the Murtas, can attest to that. I would love if you could share that song with us, or the short story with us, and we maybe, you know, in the next year or two when we get to host it again, can recite some of it, because there's plenty that is very alike today.
Oh, indeed, yeah. We with that can be arranged. Yep.
And I have a small question. What on earth is water football? I mean, I really want to run this, you know, for future regattas.
I would assume that you're in a lake boat and that you have a ball there, and that you manipulate the ball with oars.
I mean, I see endless possibilities here.
Sounds pretty chaotic, yes.
Thank you indeed.
Thanks, Vanessa. Anyone else? Any other questions or comments? I feel like you have a question or comment.
Could I just ask a couple of questions, Vincent?
Yeah, far ahead.
You refer to it as your talk about the early North Shannon Yacht Club regattas. Would you like some time to do the latter part of it from then until now? In the future sometime, perhaps?
Well, we could do that, yes, indeed, yeah.
But your dad was the president of it when it was refounded by John Keane and a few of us back then, and whatever.
That's
but anyway,
right, yeah.
The Parsons, just two things. Parsons comes up, and you refer to him as a related to the Earls of Ross. But as far as I know, the Parsons, certainly the Parsons Cup in Loughree, those Parsons, they're actually no relation of Parsons in Lough, but it may have been, or in Burr, but it may have been that there were Parsons from Burr were doing, I don't know which one it is anyway, but the ones in Athlone have no relationship with the ones in.
Are they not? Okay, well then mea culpa there, yeah.
And then, well, I'm not saying that, I'm just saying maybe. And then the other thing is the Barclay Walker Cup, which I think we sailed for in Dromineer. So I wonder how that came to Dromineer.
Well, when the North Shannon dissolved, the trophies went in various different directions. Some went to the Carrick Shannon Rowing Club. Some went to Loughree. Some went to Loughdurg.
And there were also a large number of them. I remember in the hall as you came into the George, down to the left as you went towards the dining room, there was a cabinet there, and it was full of North Shannon Regatta trophies, which for some, I don't know why they weren't in the national, but they were there anyway. And I do remember that they were all stolen. Some thieves got in one night and removed them. And I think
that's right. Yeah.
I think the Earl of Granard at the time replaced them or something like that. But anyway, it's just interesting to know where they were. And there are, of course, the ones that we use now in the North Shannon. John Leach down there, he managed to acquire one, or get, very kindly was given back one by who was the lady, John? Who was the lady who, he's mute.
Yeah, so that's the North Shannon challenge, North Shannon, the Challenge Cup, the very big one that you'd wash a baby in, or you could use it as a rose bowl or for punch bowl or whatever. Anyway, it has many uses, but that one came from in 1928, which is, as far as I'm aware, was the last year of the regatta. It was Henry Blake helmed the Blake boat with Joyce Blake, who, as you know, married Cyril Green, who was Commodore of our Yacht Club then afterwards. But poor old Henry, he was a major in the British Army, went off to the Korea, and he was killed in Korea. And he had actually brought the cup out to Korea with him, because he never married. He was a bachelor, and he was stationed in Singapore and various places in the Far East. And so when his effects were brought back to Joyce, his sister, what did she find but the North Shannon Yacht Club Challenge Cup? And so I was at a lunch party with Posey over in the not the St. David's, but the smaller house, the new house she went into, and she told me this tale, and I said, God, it would be lovely if you were to represent that back to the at that stage she didn't even realize that we were now, this in the 80s, I think, or early 90s, when Alf had helped get the regatta going, and John Keane particularly put huge energy into it and got the regatta going again. And I said, well, we're actually sailing up there again. And she thought, well, that would be very, very fitting if it was represented back to, obviously we couldn't put not to North Shannon because there's no yacht club as such. Well, in fact there is, that's another story altogether. But so it went to, for insurance purposes, it went to obviously the nearest hub, which was Loughree. And so Loughree, it's under the insurance of Loughree, and there it is. So Martlet was the name of the boat, and they won it in 1928 in very light airs on Lough Forbes, and they got a good start and they got away. That's how Joyce, who sheeted him on that on the Martlet, that's how she told me the tale. So there we go.
Lovely story, yeah.
Thanks,
I'm
John.
not sure if Erica has updated her house insurance since she won it last year.
I can tell you that when I picked up the cup, I couldn't believe it. So I went to Tom Day. I met him up in Dublin, and I said, Tom, this is a monster bloody thing. We better have it valued. And so he brought it to a former Shannon sailor who was a silversmith who was based in Grafton Street. And his name, it's in my diary. I'd have to go and look at my diary. I have it written down, but I can't remember his name. But he sailed Shannons, I think, from Loughdurg, as far as I recollect. And anyway, he valued it at 10,000 punts at the time, and that was in early 90s, whatever year it was.
Oh.
And who restarted the regatta in
We think Drummond.
in Drummond?
Well, John Keane was the person that was primarily behind it, supported by Alf.
There's a photograph of Alf, John Keane, myself, Dermot O'Mara, and I think the treasurer was Peter Dobbs. Subsequently, Moore Brown became the treasurer, and yeah, but Alf was definitely the president. So I think there's a grounds for a book there, all right.
Was that before our time, or were we in Moses baskets? And also, how did the new Burgee get developed?
That was the old Burgee, wasn't it?
Yeah, the new Burgee is the old Burgee, and it's shown in colour on one of the programs. It probably is in Lloyd's Register of Yachts as well, but it's shown. In fact, it is in Lloyd's Register of Yachts. Yes, it's a sort of two-headed eagle job.
It's a two-headed eagle, which is part of the crest of the Lloyd family.
Ah,
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I have a letter somewhere. I had it here a few days ago, but it's I don't know where it is. Anyway, and it's a letter. It's an interesting letter. It's the First World War at 1914. Well, it start Harmon in 14. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
As far as I remember.
Yeah. It's written by I don't know whether it's written by Dyke. I can't remember who it's written by, but it refers anyway to Lloyd's steamer. This man went on Lloyd's steamer in August or July or August of 1914. What date was the war started?
It was sometime August.
August 1914. Yeah, the beginning of August.
Yeah, and they left. You see, they left Brodurg to go to Regatta. Gaily, happily steamed off down to Lochwee and found that when they got there that it had been cancelled, of course, because of the war.
Yeah.
It's an interesting letter. I have it. Yeah.
In the Gailey Bay Regatta in 1914 was my grandfather was at it. Well, was to go to it, and it was cancelled, and so he went off to the war. You're absolutely right, Alan. Yeah.
But it was in Lloyd's steamer anyway. Yeah.
The Earl of Granard came in for a lot of. He was absolutely stony broke. I mean, broke beyond broke. And he had mortgaged what was left of the Granard estate to the trustees of Maynooth, who were the bishops. And he'd also prudently become a Catholic. And the bishops needed to foreclose on the mortgage, but they felt they couldn't really, evict such a prominent Catholic convert. So he clung on, and then he had the wisdom to go to America to meet Miss Ogden Mills, prop American Tobacco Company, and he married her. And the result was his fortunes turned around, and there's a proud steamer steaming under Lanesborough Bridge. You know that picture, and presumably he was in a position to run multiple regattas that he so wished at Castle Forbes.
Indeed, yeah.
When Lady Forbes, when I was told this by somebody who's now dead, so it's safe enough to tell it. When the Countess, I suppose, would arrive into the bank in Longford, the Rolls Royce would pull up outside, and the lady in waiting or whatever she had and herself would get out and go into the bank. The bank doors would then be closed behind her. She'd go into the office of the manager's office. Everybody else who happened to be there as a customer had to wait till all this performance was over. And apparently the interesting thing was that they were never allowed to let their account go below $500,000 because it was collateral for some other account somewhere else. It was a tip of useless information.
Needless to say, she paid off the trustees of Maynooth when she moved into Corpse.
And would that be the
Harmon, is that the Lady Granard who was still alive in the early 70s?
It was, yes. She
Yeah.
lived up to about then, I think.
Yes, I knew her. I had dealings
Was
with
an
her.
American. Was
Yes.
an American.
She was very grand indeed, and I was in the Bank of Ireland in College Green in those days, and I was in charge of the security area where we had the plate safe and safe deposit boxes, and she had her family silver in the vault in College Green. Obviously, Longford wasn't considered to be secure enough, but she used to come in and take out tiaras and the like, and she'd show them to me on her way out, just to sort of justify her coming in to bother me, as it were. But she always came with a lady with her, whom I never knew, but she was very gracious.
Yeah.
She always wore black.
She's the lady who brought the grey squirrels to Ireland.
She is indeed. That's right.
That's
Yeah.
right, yeah. But there were 16 of them, I think, initially.
They were a wedding present, I think, were they?
I think they
were.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah. They never crossed the Shannon, though.
No, that's true.
The grey squirrels, yeah.
No.
The Pine Martins are after them now, though, big time.
They've done a great job on them. They've got rid of them completely from our place. Got the red ones, came back spontaneously.
Mm-hmm. I wish we could get rid of the mink.
The North Shannon Yacht Club was involved in the genesis of the Shannon One Design class. Did they have any input that had a lasting effect?
Well, I think what is probably quite significant was that when a lot of the committee meetings were being held, that the Lough Derg people had difficulty getting to meetings. And thus you ended up with a meeting where perhaps there might have been 4 people from the North Shannon and might have been 1 from Lough Derg and 2 from Lough Ree. So they were very dominant in the decision to adopt the boat that they adopted.
Any
And
other?
the design and particularly the designer that they selected, because the Wallers wanted a Waller design.
Anything to support the Waller.
Bob Devenish's genes run still in the Shannon One Design class, because, as I think I'm right in saying, that he was great-grandfather of Tom Saunders.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah. Interesting.
And is the solicitor from Athlone, is that Tom Kelly's father, or because?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it? Yeah.
He lived in Abbey House.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he died, quite fairly young in life, about perhaps 1917 or so, round about that time. Yeah. And he was what was called Clerk of the Crown and Peace. That's the equivalent of County Registrar. Yeah. And he's Tom Kelly's grandfather. His son, Buster Kelly, was his son, or who retired eventually over to Williamstown and died there.
So then the connection with Chinorana and the Gleasons is because one of the
Yes.
must have married a Gleason, or what?
That's right. And there's a connection there. Her husband died, I think, but Pat Gleason and the man that owned the steamer, Peter Gleason, their mother, I think, was a Kelly, but the father died. He didn't make old bones, as far as I remember now. I'm speaking from memory, yeah. Not that I was living back in those times, but what one picked up. Yeah. And
the the sister Harmon of the Gleason wife, she's the lady who wrote that book, Letters from the Front, in First World War, where she
Well, it was
lost
her
boyfriend.
letter. Yeah.
Yeah,
And she lived in
it
Tinarana.
speaks
She lived
about-
in Tinarana as well. She lived in Tinarana as well.
But didn't Jean Kelly write the letter, the book?
No, she wrote the book. She produced the book. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
At that stage, the lady was still alive, and she didn't actually live in Tinrana. She visited Tinrana. She lived in London, believe it or not.
Well, okay, yeah, but because I remember going to Tinarana, I was sailing in as a little boy, and my father knew Dodo Gleason well from she was the same sort of age as he was, and that would be Pat and Peter's mother, and she lived there, and I remember the opera singer was there at that time. That's why, because I can't remember her, but I can remember meeting her, and so that's why I kind of assumed she lived there. But fair enough, I accept. I'm sure you're right about that. Yeah, she must have been just.
The reason why I know is because we're actually distantly related to them, and so when Marguerite was born, Mrs. Kelly, I can't remember her first name. It's in the book, obviously. But she was still living in London at that stage, and she knitted, I don't know what you call it, a christening shawl, is it?
Yeah.
For Marguerite, which we still have. She was christened in it. Yeah. But no, she lived in London, definitely lived in London, and she spent lots of time on holiday in Tinrana.
He was Phyllis. Phyllis.
And she visited. Phyllis, that's right, and she visited Abbey House quite a lot as well. Yeah. Okay.
And of course, the boat that was mentioned by Vincent that the Gleasons had at one of the early North Shannon regattas, I think you were quoting the newspaper and you said she was the Elva, Vincent, but in fact she was the Elfin. And my grandfather was one of the crew, perhaps not in North Shannon, I'm not sure about that, but he was one of the crew that sailed with them on Lough Ree. And then when they were getting rid of the Elfin, he bought her. And so that was the first sailing boat we had in the family. That was in the 1890s. So there you are. And I think your grandfather started sailing on the Truant, I think, not the Elfin, John, but maybe it was the Elfin. He certainly sailed on them as crew when he was a young fellow, yeah.
Yeah, we have photographs of him on the Truant and on the Elfin. And of course, Sid was the last owner of the Elfin.
He was,
yeah, and unfortunately, she died up in Lough Ree, as you know.
She wound up on the Inner Lakes. Yes, yeah.
I have a question from Andrew Mannion, who doesn't have a great broadband, but he's asked how many North Shannon Yacht Club trophies are in Ree and Derg. So he said, I know the cruiser class in Ree has the North Shannon Yacht Club Longford Cup, and the Ree Shannons have 4 I know of. How many North Shannon Yacht Club trophies are still going between Derg and Ree? Does anyone know?
I don't know the answer to that now. Maybe the
We
club
could,
secretary,
we
if
could,
there's
we
anybody.
could ask Eileen Brown in Ree and maybe somebody in Jack Bailey in Derg. We get a list, and Vanessa, and then we'd have a list and we could put it in the report maybe or something. Well, the report's probably gone.
There's 7. There's currently 7 that we sail for
in Ree.
today. Yeah, when we sailed North Shannon, we sailed for 7. But I'm sure Andrew means all classes, not just the Shannon.
I think he mentioned as well there's some cruiser trophies.
Yeah.
And it's Emer.
Longford Cup.
Yeah, it's Emer these days. Eileen has done her bit.
Yeah.
I seem to remember that there was perhaps a sailing race at the boat rallies, and that they had the trophy for that was a North Shannon Cup. Certainly for something at the boat rallies. I think it was the sailing race.
Well, certainly I had the opportunity to go into the rowing club in Carrick-on-Shannon, and there's a good number of trophies there as well.
I'm just noting that Emer has Emer Nooney, who overlooks the trophies, and Ree has the register, the book out. So we'll give them a few moments to find anything.
But we have to look through cruises and kids and Like, there's probably a couple of kids' trophies that you wouldn't know about.
I don't know. There's 7 there for North Shannon. The Booth Cup, the Challenge Cup, Tarmanbarry, Rinnadoon, St. Mark's Trophy, the Colossus Cup, Ruski, and the 103 Trophy.
The 103 would have been later on, though.
That would be a later generation, yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about.
Wouldn't know about without looking through them.
Alf,
Thanks,
Alf very kindly over the years, he would produce these things from his attic and give them out to people like the Inland Waterways or Loughree or Loughdern or wherever it was.
That's right. That's right.
It'd take a while to do it, but it'd be worth doing just to get it together. It'd be nice.
Can I just check? I see Decky Walsh has his hand up. Decky, do you want to join in?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yeah, briefly.
Just back to the trophies. The most prestigious one that the Shannon Boat Rally have is the Boderg Cup, and that was the North Shannon. And I recollect, I haven't been allowed to go on a rally since I got married, which was 1979, but before that, my wife is looking at me now, and that was early 70s probably. Just to thank Vincent, I thoroughly enjoyed your book on the North Shannon. I know we're indebted to the memoirs of the Delaney family, but it's also to your hard work. And it's not just for us who are going to benefit, it's going to be hugely important down the line. And thanks again.
Well, just to let everybody know that the book does exist, so that if anybody does want to buy it, you send an email to me, delaneyvincent@gmail.com, and I can pick that up.
Great, thanks, Vincent. Any final comments or questions before we draw to a close?
Just
yes,
one
there
thing.
are also some North Shannon Yacht Club trophies international in their big cupboard. I was there about 2 years ago, and I just happened to spot it. There's definitely one, if not 2 of them, for North Shannon trophies.
Yes, which would be the Granard connection again, because Lord Granard was the Commodore of the National Yacht Club. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Vincent. Thanks, John. I think John Bannon was going to jump in there.
Just a quickie heads up. Loughree Yacht Club will have a Zoom lecture on Friday night next, 7:30, circumnavigating Iceland. It's a bit out of the Shannon, I don't know, but we started in the Shannon.
Brilliant, thanks, John. Any final comments? I think Mark was going to.
Actually, I have one thing to kind of ask. I would be kind of, probably 25, 30 years younger than a lot of people on the Zoom. So for a lot of people who are 50, 55, 60, 65, 70 plus years old, like you see that as your youth, whereas we see that as history. So that's it. Like I genuinely have a huge interest in what happened in 1972 for the 50-year anniversary, or if you've got photographs from a random regatta in 1983. There's a huge demand to see what's happened when the next generation, DJ Sam, these sort of people, people of our generation, what happened before we were born. There's a lot of information to be passed on, and it just to be able to listen to a regatta from 1975 or 1970 or 1965 even. There's a huge demand for that sort of information. So if anyone is interested in doing something like that, I'd definitely be interested.
Which brings me on nicely to say, sorry, was someone popping in there?
Me, I'm just Vanessa, sorry, hi. Which brings us to the whole centennial publication. So that's so interesting that you say that, Mark, because we are putting together a publication to celebrate the 100 years of the Shannon One design, which is obviously next year. And we will one section of the publication will give a summary, like nothing is as detailed now as Vincent has gone through, but a summary of all of the regattas that have been sailed outside of the clubs. So you will get a sense from this publication of, you know, the I suppose what the class has been like in all of its places, with all of its characters and all of its boats, with this publication. Something I think that you're looking for is perhaps more in detail. So I suggest maybe, Naomi, we could do a round 2, and it could be future topics for these conversations, because it looks like we're going to be here for another year. And also,
there's probably also somebody who had a camera 1 year and just took 100 photographs during that 1 year.
Yeah, there's the likes of
just random pictures.
There's the likes of Ian McNally has a wonderful RIP has a wonderful catalogue that he's shared with us for the publication. But you could contact Ian Jr. directly, and you know, but we'll be including these in the publication. There's definitely loads of stuff there. Another great source is the Nolans. Because Susie she had a number of years just took incessant photographs from the years that you're probably talking about as well.
Susie's not that old, in fairness.
No, but sorry, more recently, but the likes of Ian, you know, there's some wonderful photographs out there.
Just like regattas from, let's say, 1965, 1970, 1975, 1980. There's a lot of people on this forum here who, you know, have really vivid memories of particular regattas. Like bring in the kicker, stuff like that. Bring in the kicker. Have a conversation about how the kicker was going in.
I'm going to bring Sam in there. Sam.
I'm after sending a load from like Derek Dara regatta 1972 and 1968 kind of onwards, and we've been scanning them up, and Mum had them all, of course. And, they're brilliant. Some of them are brilliant, but hopefully we'll find more.
I have a box of slides which I have to go through, but I have to get them scanned into a form where we can use them. And one of the problems with slides is the colors are all sort of slightly out, and that's something we'll have to address in due course as well.
If I may make a comment, it would be that Noel Donagh a few years ago did absolute Trojan work. We could not have paid him to do it. He copied all the archives that are in the library in Athlone, every one of them, every report since the report started. And you might recollect that we then started going back 50 years for every annual report and putting the annual report 50 years previously into it as a PDF. But Noel Donagh did an enormous amount of work, and I was chairman for a lot of time when he was doing it. But he really deserves a huge, as it were, our grateful thanks and appreciation, because I mean, I don't think we couldn't have paid somebody to do it, honestly. So there's lots and lots of material there for people who are writing their stories, you know, their accounts for the centenary book, which Vanessa thankfully has raised. Well done, Vanessa. Yeah.
Forever beating the drum.
I think Marguerite's out walking the dog at the moment, so unfortunately she's not here. Otherwise, I think she'd be beating the drum, but we really need to beat that drum and for people to get their articles in. I've been asking some people to do them, and some of the articles are absolutely, they are brilliant. They are hilarious. There's paintings coming in, there's poetry coming in, there's a prose coming in, there's some amazing stuff coming in, and this book really will be so exciting. It's just everything I've seen. I just got another article in last night with photographs and everything. And I mean, this book is going to be superb. I just hope we have enough money to put into it, because it really will be the investment.
John, we have the money sorted. Don't you worry. And also, I have to stress, this is going to be heavy on the human stories, because really, I think what we can definitely say is that it's the characters that make up the class. The boats are nearly the excuse these days. I think they've always been like that. And that's really what we're trying to focus on, is to get across the reason why we hold the class so dear to our hearts. Boom. Mic drop.
Thanks, Vanessa. Reggie has his hand up. Reggie, you're on mute. Hang on, Reggie, you have to unmute.
Yeah. The work that Noel Donagh did, which is very extensive, is all on a CD. So if you're looking for it, I'm sure he'll have a copy. I think I probably have a copy in the archives, but it's definitely on a CD.
Thanks, Reggie.
Another thing, the North Shannon Regatta girls, the style is absolutely magnificent, particularly the hats. I think really you should think of having a dressing up day in one of your regattas and have a ladies' day with really stylish hats, and gentlemen, especially white tops to the yachting caps. That's in a few places as well, but some of them are missing. Very interesting talk, Vincent. Thank you very much.
Reggie, would you sail in the ladies' race?
Sorry?
Would you dress up and sail in the ladies' race?
Don't get that at all.
Alan, I would just...
ever got away with that.
Yeah.
I would just like to point out that in a recent year at a North Shannon, we had an entire female helm fleet without calling it a ladies' race, with the exception of Frank Brown. But everybody else, it's a heavily dominant female fleet usually. So, you know, more power to it, and more people, please come up sailing. And I think basically on what you said, Vincent, that it used to be a 4-day event. Well, I mean, that's food for thought in the future.
There we are now. Thanks, Vanessa. Well said. Okay, any final comments? Or what I might just mention on back of all of that is this is our final planned Soda Zoom presentation for this series. That's not to say we're not open. We're very open to further presentations, but we're all ears, and we're open to any suggestions that anyone has, or if anyone has a potential idea in mind but aren't quite sure, just drop me an email and we can talk through it, because we'd love to host a few more, especially if there are a few long weeks or short months ahead of us. So without
Naomi, I just want to jump in a second. Obviously, people might be looking at their sailing schedule, but I fear we won't be able to get Mount Shannon going this year, just with the way things are going at the moment. So kind of advance warning before I send out an email.
Thanks, Dave.
I tried.
Even if we don't want to hear it, but thank you.
Yeah.
It'll be a mighty 2022.
I was about to say it's the regatta that's been hit 2 years in a row.
It's the first, Dave, I'd say, of many.
Yeah, we can't do a whole lot about it just with the way things are going at the moment.
No.
We have two rolling deposits on cottages in Mount Shannon, so we can roll, as Dave Byrne would say, roll it again.
I'm afraid you'll have to make a phone call to them, see if you can get a hold of them, and see if you can roll it on for yet another year.
Myself and Erica have our fingers crossed because we've already booked our house for Con, so we'll see what happens there.
Okay, it's secured. We can get it back if we need.
It's not looking great at the moment.
It's all over. Don't worry.
Hey, bye. Okay, well done. Thank you.
Vincent, thank you very much. Again.
Thank you, Vincent.
Vincent's second
Thank you, Vincent.
Take care, guys.